Last time on Heartland Ridge Ranch. What began as a routine supply run through Willow Pass quickly became a fight for survival. A violent storm trapped the Heartland Ridge crew deep in the Wyoming mountains, forcing Wyatt, Caleb, Mason, Tyler, Hannah, and Emma to rely on courage, trust, and each other to make it home. As danger closed in, Caleb risked everything to save Emma. And in the middle of the storm, the quiet cowboy finally said the words he'd been holding back. I love you. By the time the storm passed, hearts had changed, bonds had deepened, and everyone returned to Heartland Ridge stronger than before. But now, a discovery hidden for decades is about to uncover a piece of Heartland Ridge history no one saw coming. The letter in the cedar chest. Chapter 1. The attic. Late autumn settled gently over Heartland Ridge Ranch. The violent storm over Willow Pass had passed days ago, but its effects lingered. Storm, the puppy formerly known as absolutely not another dog, according to Charlie, had now become a permanent member of the Ridge family, which surprised no one, especially not Bo. Storm followed Bo everywhere, kitchen, barn, porch, bathroom door, everywhere. Bo considered this a great honor. Charlie considered it slightly exhausting. Bo ran through the kitchen with Storm chasing at full speed. He's fast! Charlie barely stepped aside in time. Walking feet! Too late, Storm slid across the hardwood. Bo slid behind him. Sadie nearly collapsed laughing. Ellie calmly lifted her juice before disaster reached her. Experience. Lots of experience. Wyatt sat at the island reading paperwork. Calm, untouched by chaos, as usual. Charlie pointed toward the hallway. Tell your son to stop sprinting. Wyatt lowered the papers. Looked at Bo. Buddy? Bo froze. Storm froze too. Somehow. Inside voice, inside speed. Bo blinked. Yes, sir. Problem solved, mostly. Bo immediately whispered, storm, slow chaos. Charlie pinched the bridge of her nose. That still counted as chaos. Emma sat nearby grating papers while Caleb fixed a loose cabinet hinge, not officially moved in, still somehow always there. Charlie noticed. Charlie noticed everything. She glanced at Wyatt. You realize she practically lives here now? Wyatt sipped coffee. Yes. Charlie smiled. I like it. Wyatt didn't look up. I know. She narrowed her eyes. How? You've baked 4 desserts this week. Emma nearly choked. Caleb's mouth twitched. Charlie looked offended. That proves nothing. It proved everything. Later that afternoon, Charlie stood at the base of the attic stairs with hands on her hips. Determined, focused, dangerous. Wyatt saw that look, immediately suspicious. What? Charlie pointed upward. The attic. Wyatt frowned. What about it? It's a disaster. Silence. Wyatt considered, then gave the most husband answer possible. It's an attic. Charlie stared. That is not a defense. Every year before winter, Charlie did one thing Wyatt dreaded. Storage reorganization, boxes moved, old decorations sorted, summer gear stored, winter supplies brought down, necessary, reasonable, completely exhausting. Charlie clapped once. Mason! From the living room? No, Charlie smiled. Wasn't a request. Pause. Then, coming. Good boy. 10 minutes later, attic duty began. Participants included Charlie, commander, Mason, unwilling labor, Ellie, helpful, Sadie, questionable, Bo, chaos, Storm, extra chaos. Wyatt wisely disappeared to the barn. Coward, Charlie noticed. She would remember that. The attic smelled like cedar, dust, and old years. Sunlight streamed through a small round window. Boxes lined every wall, Christmas bins, photo albums, baby clothes, old ranch ledgers. Emma smiled. This feels like buried history. Charlie laughed. That's exactly what it is. Sadie immediately became excited. I want buried treasure. Ellie sighed. It's an attic. Sadie crossed her arms. Treasure can be anywhere. Not wrong, unfortunately. Bo had already found something. Mama! Charlie turned. What? Bo pointed toward the far wall, behind stacked crates. "What's that?" Everyone looked. Partially hidden beneath old blankets sat a large wooden chest, dust-covered, cedar, iron handles, old, very old. Charlie froze, completely. Mason noticed instantly. "Mom?" She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed locked on the chest. Emma saw the change. Something shifted. Something emotional. Ellie stepped closer. "Have you seen it before?" Charlie swallowed. "Yes." Her voice softened. "Once?" Sadie frowned. "Why is it hidden?" Charlie didn't answer immediately, then quietly said, "Because your father put it away." Silence. That got everyone's attention. Even Storm stopped moving. Almost. Mason moved toward the chest. "You want me to bring it out?" Charlie hesitated. Long enough that everyone noticed. Then finally, "Yes." Mason crouched, grabbed the handles. Heavy, very heavy. He dragged it into the light. Dust rose. The cedar chest sat between them like a time capsule. A piece of Heartland Ridge before Heartland Ridge became what it was now. Emma's curiosity skyrocketed. "What is it?" Charlie stared at the lid, her voice nearly a whisper. "The beginning." Silence. Deep silence. No one joked, no one moved. Even Sadie understood. This mattered. A lot. Charlie slowly knelt beside the chest. Her fingers brushed the cedar lid. Emotion flashed across her face. Memory, love, pain, nostalgia, everything. Then she lifted the lid. The scent of aged cedar filled the attic. Inside were neatly preserved pieces of a life long past. Photographs, folders, receipts, old journals, horse ribbons, faded maps, baby keepsakes. Mason picked up a photo and froze. "No way." He turned it around. Everyone stared. Young Wyatt, late 20s, leaner, rougher, no gray at his temples, no polished confidence, just raw intensity. And beside him, young Charlie, laughing, beautiful, wind in her hair, standing beside an unfinished barn. Emma smiled. "Oh, wow." Sadie squinted. "Daddy had hair." Mason laughed. "He still has hair." Sadie pointed. "More hair." "Fair. Very fair." Then Ellie noticed something deeper in the chest, underneath the journals, wrapped in a faded blue ribbon. Letters, several of them, tied together. She carefully lifted them. Charlie's breath caught, because she recognized them instantly. No, that couldn't be. Ellie looked down. "There's a name." Charlie's heart stopped. "Whose?" Ellie read the envelope, then slowly looked up, eyes wide, confused. "Mom." Silence. Ellie swallowed. "This one is addressed to you." The attic went completely still. Charlie stared. At the envelope, at the handwriting, at the name written across the front. Elegant, familiar, impossible. Her voice barely emerged. "Wyatt." Mason froze. Emma stopped breathing. Sadie whispered, "Dad wrote you a letter?" Ellie turned the envelope over, then frowned. "It's unopened." Silence. Heavy silence. No one moved, because one question suddenly filled the room. If Wyatt wrote the letter, why had Charlie never read it? Charlie slowly reached for the envelope, hands trembling, because deep down, before she even opened it, she already knew. This letter came from a version of Wyatt Ridge almost no one had ever known. And whatever was inside had been waiting decades to be found. Chapter 2. The unopened letter. No one spoke. The attic had gone completely silent. Even Storm seemed to understand something important was happening. Charlie stared at the envelope in her hands. The paper had yellowed with age, the edges softened by time. But the handwriting, she would know that handwriting anywhere. Wyatt. Young Wyatt. Before the ranch. Before success. Before children. Before everything Heartland Ridge had become. Her fingers trembled. Just slightly. but everyone noticed. Mason looked between the envelope and his mother. Mom. His voice softened. You never saw that? Charlie slowly shook her head. No. Sadie frowned. How? Ellie answered first. If it's unopened? She looked at Charlie. Dad never gave it to her. Silence. Emma felt a chill, because that made the mystery even bigger. This wasn't a lost letter. This was a letter written, then hidden, for decades. Bo sat cross-legged beside Storm, eyes wide. Can we open it? Charlie let out a shaky laugh. Only Bo would ask the obvious question. Mason rubbed the back of his neck. That's actually a fair question, Sadie nodded enthusiastically. Yes. Ellie sighed. Of course you two want to read private mail, Sadie looked offended. It's historical. Emma nearly laughed. That was dangerously good logic. Charlie turned the envelope over. The seal had never been broken, still intact, still waiting. She stared at it, then quietly said, He wrote this before we got married. Mason froze. Emma blinked. Sadie frowned. Wait. She looked confused. Before marriage means before us? Mason snorted. Yes, Sadie. Sadie gasped. I know what before means. Ellie muttered. Questionable. Charlie ran her thumb across the seal. Memory flooded back. A younger Wyatt, dust-covered boots, calloused hands, too much responsibility, too little money, too much pride, too much love. She suddenly remembered something. Not clearly, just enough. A night. A fight. Silence afterward, then Wyatt disappearing for hours. Her breathing changed. Emma noticed instantly. You remember something? Charlie swallowed. Yes. Mason leaned forward. What? Charlie stared at the envelope, then finally said, I think... A pause. I know when he wrote this. Silence. Everyone waited. Charlie lowered herself onto an old storage crate. The attic disappeared, and memory took over. 22 years earlier. Heartland Ridge wasn't Heartland Ridge yet. It was land, that was all. Raw Wyoming land. Fence lines half built. A small, weather-beaten house. One unfinished barn. Debt. Bills. Risk. Hope. Young Wyatt Ridge stood in the dirt beside his truck. 28 years old. Exhausted. Covered in sawdust and mud. Trying to build something impossible. Trying to become the man he believed Charlie deserved. And failing. At least that's what he thought. Back in the attic, Charlie's voice softened. It was winter, her eyes unfocused. Before the big barn. Mason immediately recognized the timeline. Very early ranch. The hardest years. Charlie continued. Money was bad. Emma stayed still, listening. Charlie rarely talked about those years in detail. Very rarely. We were engaged. Charlie smiled sadly. But barely making it. A pause. Your father was working sunrise to midnight. Another pause. He stopped sleeping. Mason frowned. That sounded familiar. Too familiar. Work until collapse. Classic Wyatt? Sadie asked quietly. Were you scared? Charlie looked at her, then nodded. Yes. No pretending. No sugarcoating. Yes. Ellie leaned closer. Of what? Charlie answered honestly. Losing the ranch. A pause. Losing him? Silence. That landed, especially with Emma, because sometimes the scariest thing isn't losing a dream. It's losing the person attached to it. Bo hugged Storm tighter. Daddy. Charlie smiled softly. Your daddy was little? Bo frowned. No. Charlie laughed through emotion. Yes. No. Yes. Bo thought hard, then concluded, impossible. Mason laughed. Reasonable. Very reasonable. Charlie looked down at the letter again, then said the words that changed everything. The night before this, she swallowed. Wyatt asked me if I was sure. Mason frowned. Sure about what? Charlie looked up. About marrying him? Silence. Complete silence. Emma's heart sank because she already sensed where this was going, and she didn't like it. Not one bit. Sadie's eyes widened. What? Ellie stared. Mason froze. Even Bo stopped petting Storm. Charlie continued. He asked me if I was absolutely certain. Her voice lowered. That I wanted this life. No one moved. No one breathed. Because everyone knew what Wyatt meant. Not marriage, not really the ranch, the struggle, the sacrifice, the uncertainty, everything. Emma whispered. What did you say? Charlie's eyes softened. I told him yes. A pause. Without hesitation. She smiled sadly, which should have comforted him. Her fingers tightened around the envelope. But instead, silence. I think it scared him. Mason frowned. Why? Charlie looked directly at him. Because your father loved me enough to believe I deserved more than struggle. That hit hard. Very hard. Because every person in that attic knew Wyatt Ridge. Steady, protective, sacrificial. It suddenly made terrifying sense. Then footsteps sounded below. Heavy, familiar. Everyone froze. Because they knew that gait. Slow, steady, boots on wood, Wyatt. Returning from the barn. Charlie's pulse spiked. Mason whispered, Oh, no. Sadie's eyes widened. Bo whispered loudly, It's Daddy. Ellie closed her eyes. Too loud. Much too loud. The attic stairs creaked. One step, then another. Then Wyatt appeared. Cowboy hat in hand, slight dust on his shirt, calm expression, until he saw the scene. Everyone gathered. The cedar chest open. Charlie holding an envelope. His envelope. His face changed instantly, not dramatically, subtly, but to anyone who knew him, it was obvious. He knew. Immediately. Exactly what they had found. Silence filled the attic. Heavy, ancient, unavoidable. Wyatt's eyes locked onto the letter. Then onto Charlie, and for the first time in a very long time. Wyatt Ridge looked shaken. Charlie's voice barely emerged. One question, the question waiting decades to be asked. Wyatt? A pause, her eyes filled. Why didn't you give this to me? Silence. Wyatt stared at the letter, then closed his eyes. Just once. As if bracing for a memory he had spent years burying. When he opened them again, everyone knew. The truth was finally coming. Chapter 3. Before the ranch. No one moved. The attic felt impossibly small now. Too quiet. Too heavy. Wyatt stood at the top of the stairs, hat in one hand, staring at the envelope Charlie held. The envelope he had written. The envelope he had hidden. The envelope he had prayed no one would ever find. And yet, here it was. Waiting. Still. After 22 years. Charlie rose slowly to her feet. Her eyes never left his. Wyatt. Her voice shook. Just slightly. Why didn't you give this to me? Silence. Deep silence. Wyatt looked at the floor, then at the cedar chest, then finally back to Charlie. For a long moment, he said nothing. Emma had never seen him like this. Not during storms, not during danger, not during chaos. This was different. This was a man facing something far more difficult than danger. His past. Sadie looked between them, confused, concerned. Ellie gently put a hand on her sister's arm. Even she knew. No interruptions. Not now. Bo hugged Storm tighter. The puppy slept peacefully, blissfully unaware of emotional devastation. Lucky dog. Wyatt exhaled slowly, then spoke. Low, quiet, honest. Because if you read it... A pause. His jaw tightened. You would have left. Silence. Complete silence. Charlie froze. Mason stopped breathing. Emma felt her chest tighten. No, that couldn't be right. Charlie whispered. You wanted me to leave? Wyatt shook his head immediately. No. Then he looked directly at her, pain visible now. Raw, unfiltered. That was the problem? Silence. He swallowed. I didn't want you to. A pause, but I thought you should. That landed like thunder, not loud, but devastating. Mason stared at his father. He had spent his entire life seeing Wyatt Ridge as immovable, the mountain, the anchor, the man with answers. But now, he saw something else. A younger version, a scared version, a man capable of doubting himself. That changed something. Deeply. Charlie's eyes filled. You thought I should leave you? Wyatt's voice lowered. I thought you deserved better than me. Immediate tears filled Charlie's eyes. Emma covered her mouth. Because suddenly everything made sense. The hidden letter, the fear, the silence, all of it. Wyatt looked toward the old photograph in Mason's hand. Young Charlie smiling beside an unfinished barn. Then memory took him. 22 years earlier. Snow covered the Wyoming ground in thin white sheets. Wind pushed through unfinished barn beams. Young Wyatt Ridge stood alone inside the structure, hammer in hand, bills in pocket, debt in his head, fear in his chest. The bank had called that morning. Again, he owed more than he could pay. Livestock prices were down, fencing costs were up. The truck needed repairs. The roof still wasn't finished. Everything felt like it was collapsing. And tomorrow, he was supposed to marry Charlie. Young Wyatt dropped the hammer. Frustration surged. He grabbed a ledger. Numbers, always numbers, never enough. He slammed the book shut, hard. Then came the thought he had been fighting for months. The thought he hated. The thought that wouldn't leave. Charlie deserved better. Better than debt. Better than uncertainty. Better than this. Better than him. Back in the attic, Wyatt spoke without looking up. I thought love was supposed to protect you. Charlie's tears fell silently now. Wyatt continued. So I asked myself one question. Mason barely breathed. What question? Wyatt answered. If I really loved her? A pause. Would I keep her in a life that might break her? Silence. The weight of that question settled over everyone, especially Emma, because it was so painfully Wyatt, protective to a fault, sacrificial to a fault, loving to a fault. Flashback. That night. Young Wyatt sat alone at a wooden table in the old ranch house, one lamp on, wind outside, paper in front of him, pen in hand, and he wrote line after line, stopping, starting, crossing out words, trying to say the impossible, trying to break his own heart to save hers. Charlie whispered, You wrote it that night. Wyatt nodded once. Yes. She clutched the letter tighter. Why hide it? Wyatt finally looked at her, and for the first time since entering the attic, emotion cracked fully through, because now came the part he had never told anyone. No one, not even Charlie. He gave a broken, quiet laugh, one filled with disbelief, at himself, at memory, at love, at sunrise. His voice roughened. I came to give it to you. Silence. Charlie stared. What happened? Wyatt's eyes softened. Then, after 22 years, he told the truth. You smiled at me. Everyone froze. Charlie blinked. What? Wyatt gave the faintest smile, pain and warmth mixed together. You opened the door. A pause. You smiled like you had no doubt. Another pause. You looked at me like I already was everything you believed I could become. His voice broke slightly. And I couldn't do it. Tears spilled down Charlie's cheeks because she remembered. She remembered that morning. Coffee in hand, barefoot, opening the door. Seeing him, smiling, completely unaware he had arrived carrying goodbye. Wyatt's voice dropped to almost a whisper. I couldn't break your heart. Silence. Then he said the words that shook the entire attic. So quiet. So honest. So devastating. So I decided I'd rather spend my life trying to become the man you saw. A pause. Then become the man who walked away. No one moved. No one spoke. Because every person in that attic knew they had just heard the origin of Heartland Ridge Ranch. Not cattle, not land, not barns, faith, love. Charlie. Charlie looked down at the unopened envelope in her hands, tears falling freely now, then back at Wyatt. Her voice shook. "Read it to me." Silence. Wyatt froze. Charlie stepped closer, eyes wet, heart open. "Please." A pause. "Read me the letter." And just like that, the words Wyatt Ridge had buried for 22 years were finally about to be spoken aloud. Chapter 4. The Hard Choice. No one moved, no one spoke. The attic seemed to hold its breath. Charlie stood in front of Wyatt, the unopened letter trembling slightly in her hands. "Read it to me." Her voice was soft, but unwavering. Not a request born from curiosity. This was deeper than that. She needed to hear the words. All of them. The words he had carried alone for 22 years. Wyatt stared at the envelope. For a long moment, he didn't reach for it. Emma understood why. Because once spoken, the words would become real, not buried, not hidden, real. And somehow that felt terrifying. Even now, even after all these years. Charlie stepped closer. One step, then another, until only inches separated them. Her eyes shone with tears. But there was no anger there. Only love. Only hurt. Only understanding. "Wyatt." His eyes lifted to hers. She gently placed the letter in his hand. "Please." Silence. Then finally, he nodded. Once. Mason quietly moved an old wooden chair toward Charlie. She sat, Ellie beside her. Sadie curled against Charlie's arm. Bo sat cross-legged on the floor with Storm asleep in his lap. Emma stood beside Caleb. Without thinking, her hand found his. Caleb squeezed it gently. No words. Just presence. Very Caleb. Wyatt carefully broke the seal. The soft tear of old paper sounded impossibly loud. 22 years. Gone in one motion. He unfolded the letter. The paper shook once, only once. Then his voice came, low, steady, younger somehow. As if part of him had gone backward in time. "Charlie? If you're reading this, it means I found the courage to do something that already feels like the worst decision of my life." Charlie's breath caught. Sadie looked confused. Ellie's eyes filled immediately. Emma felt her throat tighten. Wyatt continued. "I've started this letter 3 times. I keep trying to write something that hurts less. There isn't anything." Silence. Even Storm stayed asleep, as if the whole attic refused to interrupt. "I love you. I need you to know that first." Nothing in this letter changes that. Charlie covered her mouth. Tears spilled freely now. Wyatt's voice roughened, but he kept going. "Loving you has been the easiest thing I've ever done. Everything else has been harder." Mason looked down. That line hit him hard, because it sounded exactly like Wyatt. Simple, honest, brutal in its truth. Flashback. Young Wyatt sat at that kitchen table, lamp glowing, hand cramped from writing, eyes red from exhaustion. He stared at the page, thinking of Charlie, her laugh, her stubbornness, the way she believed in him, the way she looked at empty land and somehow saw a future. He never understood how she did that. He only knew she did. "Back in the attic," Wyatt read on. "I promised you a future, a home, a ranch, a life worth building." A pause. His jaw tightened. "And right now, I don't know if I can give you any of it." Charlie quietly shook her head. "No." The whisper escaped before she could stop it. Emma felt tears sting her own eyes. Because she could hear it. Young Wyatt, alone, terrified, convinced love wasn't enough. The bank called again. I'm behind. Repairs cost more than I planned. Feed costs more. Everything costs more. A bitter half laugh escaped Mason. Not because it was funny, because some things never changed. Ranch life. Always one storm away. Always one bad season away. I keep looking at what I have, then looking at you. And the math doesn't work. Charlie broke. A quiet sob escaped, because now she understood. Fully. He hadn't doubted their love. He doubted himself. That somehow hurt more. Wyatt swallowed hard, then continued. You deserve stability. You deserve comfort. You deserve security. You deserve a man who can promise tomorrow. His voice nearly cracked. I can barely promise next month. Silence. Deep silence. Emma squeezed Caleb's hand tighter. Caleb squeezed back. Flashback. Young Wyatt folded his hands over his face, shoulders shaking once. Just once. Not crying. Not exactly. But breaking. Because some pain doesn't look like tears. Sometimes it looks like silence. Like surrender. Like believing the woman you love deserves a better life than the one you can give. Wyatt's voice dropped lower. The hardest part was coming. Everyone felt it. So if loving you means protecting you, maybe protecting you means letting you go. Charlie's entire body went still. Bo looked up at his mother. Confused. Scared. Sadie started crying. Even Ellie, always composed Ellie, wiped tears away. Emma couldn't stop her own. No one could. Then came the line. The line that explained everything. The line that changed the story. Wyatt read, if staying with me means years of struggle, fear, and sacrifice, then loving you may require the one thing I don't know how to survive. His voice finally broke. Just slightly. Barely. Still enough for everyone to hear. Losing you. Silence. Absolute silence. Charlie's shoulders shook. Mason stared at his father like he'd never truly known him before, because he understood now. Heartland Ridge had not been built by confidence. It had been built by fear overcome, by love choosing to stay. Wyatt looked at the final section. Only a few lines left. Yet somehow the hardest of all. He continued. Voice raw, open, no walls left. If you walk away after this, I will understand. I will hate every second of it. But I will understand, Charlie cried openly now. No restraint, no composure, just tears. Years of love colliding with years of hidden pain. Then Wyatt read the final lines. The last words he wrote 22 years ago. The words young Wyatt never believed Charlie would hear. You made me believe I could build something worth leaving behind. Maybe one day I will become the man you already think I am. If that happens, it will be because you loved me first. Silence. No one breathed. No one moved. One line remained. Wyatt's voice softened into almost a whisper. I will love you for the rest of my life. Wyatt. The letter slipped slightly in his hand. Silence consumed the attic. Charlie stared at him through tears, and in that moment, everyone understood. The hardest choice Wyatt Ridge ever made wasn't choosing the ranch. It was choosing to believe Charlie might be right about him. Chapter 5. What Love Builds. No one moved. The attic sat in complete silence, the kind of silence that only comes after something sacred has been spoken aloud. Wyatt lowered the letter. His hands were steady now, but only because he had spent decades learning how to hold difficult things without shaking. Charlie stared at him through tears. 22 years of marriage, 22 years of shared struggle, shared victories, shared children, shared grief, shared joy, and somehow she had just learned something entirely new about the man she loved. Charlie slowly rose from the chair. Sadie loosened her grip on her arm. Ellie stepped back. Bo hugged Storm tighter. Everyone understood. This moment belonged to Wyatt and Charlie, no one else. Charlie crossed the attic floor. one slow step at a time. She stopped directly in front of Wyatt, close enough that he could see every tear on her cheeks, close enough that she could see the same guarded strength she had fallen in love with all those years ago. But beneath it now, pain, regret, fear, old fear, the kind that never fully leaves. Charlie's voice trembled, but not from anger, from heartbreak. Wyatt. His eyes stayed on hers. She swallowed hard, then asked the question buried beneath everything. The question everyone felt coming. The question only she could ask. You really would have let me go? Silence. The question hung between them, heavy, terrible, necessary. Wyatt closed his eyes. Just once. When he opened them again, there was no hiding, no walls, no stoicism, only truth. Yes. The word landed like thunder. Emma's breath caught. Mason stared. Sadie cried harder. Even Bo looked devastated. Because sometimes one honest word hurts more than 100 cruel ones. Charlie's tears fell faster now. Why? Her voice cracked. Why would you do that? Wyatt's jaw tightened. Because there was no beautiful way to explain it. Only truth. So he gave her truth. The way he always did. I would have broken my own heart. His voice roughened. If it meant protecting yours. Silence. Complete silence. Emma covered her mouth. Caleb's hand tightened around hers. Mason felt something in his chest split open. Because there it was. The thing that defined Wyatt Ridge. The thing he had unknowingly spent his whole life learning from. Love to Wyatt was never possession. It was protection, even at personal cost, especially at personal cost. Charlie shook her head through tears. You idiot. The words came out broken. Half sob, half laugh. Wyatt blinked. The attic froze. Sadie sniffled. Ellie frowned. Mason stared. Did Mom just call Dad an idiot? Bold, very bold. Charlie stepped closer. Now only inches separated them. You stubborn, impossible man. Wyatt stared. Silent. She pressed a trembling hand against his chest. Right over his heart. The same heart that had loved her enough to almost destroy itself. Did you really think so little of me? Wyatt frowned. What? Charlie cried openly now. Did you really believe I loved your success more than I loved you? Silence. Wyatt didn't answer. That was answer enough. Charlie understood instantly. And somehow, that hurt more than the letter. She shook her head. No, Wyatt. Her voice strengthened, not louder. Stronger. The Charlie Ridge everyone knew. The emotional heart of Heartland Ridge. You were never the ranch. Silence. Everyone listened. Every word mattered. You were never the barn. A pause. You were never the land. Another pause. You were never the money. Her hand stayed over his heart, steady, certain. You. A beat. Were always the thing I chose. Silence shattered. Emma's tears fell freely now. Mason looked down, overwhelmed. Sadie openly sobbed. Even Ellie wiped tears. Tyler would absolutely cry if he were here, and deny it forever. Charlie continued, voice shaking with decades of truth. When I said yes to you, a pause. I said yes to hard years. Yes to uncertainty. Yes to sacrifice. Her eyes never left Wyatt's. Yes to storms. A soft breath. Yes to struggle. Then the final truth. Yes to building something together. Silence, because everyone understood now. Heartland Ridge had not been built by Wyatt alone. Never. It had always been Wyatt and Charlie. Together. Wyatt's composure finally cracked. Not dramatically, just enough. His voice dropped. Raw. I was scared. 4 words, simple, honest, devastating. Charlie softened instantly. Of course he had been. She knew that young man, the one carrying too much, too early, trying to become unbreakable before life had taught him how. Wyatt looked around the attic. at his children, at Emma and Caleb, at the chest, at the photographs, at the life around him, then back to Charlie. His voice was rough now. I kept waiting to become enough. Silence. Mason felt those words hit him like a punch. Because hadn't he done the same? Hadn't Caleb? Hadn't Tyler? Hadn't nearly every man trying to carry responsibility felt that? Waiting to become enough. Waiting to deserve love. Waiting to arrive. Charlie's expression softened into something beautiful. Deeply sad. Deeply loving. Deeply knowing. She gently touched his face. Wyatt. Her thumb brushed his cheek. And then she said the words that would stay with everyone forever. You never understood, did you? He frowned slightly. Understood what? Charlie smiled through tears. The warm smile that had stopped him from leaving 22 years ago. The same smile. Unchanged. Then she answered. That we built this together. Silence, a breath, a heartbeat, a lifetime. She looked around at the attic, at the family, at the ranch beyond those walls, then back at him. This, she whispered. Heartland Ridge. A pause. This is what love builds. And in that moment, Wyatt Ridge finally understood something Charlie had known all along. He had never needed to become worthy before being loved. He became the man he was, because someone loved him while he was still becoming. Chapter 6, Still Choosing You. The attic remained silent. No one dared break the moment. Charlie's words still hung in the air. This is what love builds. Wyatt stood motionless for perhaps the first time in decades. Wyatt Ridge had no immediate answer. No practical solution, no steady leadership speech. Only emotion. Raw, unprotected, human. Charlie kept her hand against his cheek. Warm, steady, familiar. The same hand that had held his through droughts, through failed seasons, through births, through sleepless nights, through every storm. And suddenly Wyatt saw it. Not as memory, as truth. Every fence post, every barn beam, every pasture, every child, every laugh around the dinner table. None of it had been built by his strength alone. Charlie had been there, every step, every hard season, every impossible year. He had carried responsibility. She had carried hope. Together, they built Heartland Ridge. Wyatt's voice finally came. Low, rough, almost boyish in its vulnerability. I was so afraid of failing you. Charlie's eyes softened. You did fail me. Silence. Everyone froze. Mason's eyes widened. Sadie stopped crying. Ellie blinked. Bo whispered, What? Even Emma nearly stopped breathing. Charlie, what? Wyatt stared at her. The words hit harder than any accusation. His voice barely emerged. I did. Charlie nodded, tears still falling. Yes. Silence. Then she stepped closer, until their foreheads nearly touched, and her expression softened into pure love. You failed me. A pause when you decided for me. Silence. The entire attic stilled, because everyone understood immediately. Charlie continued, voice gentle but firm. You failed me when you assumed I couldn't choose hardship. A pause. When you assumed I needed protecting from the life I willingly chose. Her hand moved from his cheek to his chest, over his heart. Again, always the heart. You didn't fail because you struggled. Her voice shook. You failed because you almost carried the burden alone. Silence, complete silence. Emma felt tears well again. Because this wasn't just about Wyatt. This was bigger. This was about love itself. Wyatt lowered his head. The truth cut deep because it was true. He had tried to protect Charlie, but in doing so, he had nearly denied her partnership, her agency, her choice. Love wasn't meant to be carried alone. Even noble sacrifice could become isolation. And that realization shook him. Charlie smiled through tears, then said the thing only Charlie could say, the thing only she had earned. Wyatt Ridge. His eyes lifted. She smiled. That smile, the same one from the morning he almost walked away. Still there, still hers, still his undoing. I never wanted easy. Silence. She took a breath. I wanted you. Just 4 words, but they shattered whatever composure Wyatt had left. His eyes filled, only slightly. Most people would never notice. Charlie did. She always did. Her voice softened. You still don't understand, do you? Wyatt gave the faintest shake of his head. Charlie smiled. Then I'll say it clearly. She glanced around the attic, at their children, at Emma and Caleb, at the cedar chest, at decades of life, then back at him. I didn't marry you because you promised comfort. A pause. I married you because I believed in the man you were becoming. Another pause. And I'd marry you again. Tears spilled down Wyatt's face, quietly. No one said a word, because none of them had ever seen it before. Not like this, not openly. Wyatt Ridge crying, not from grief, not from loss, from love. Charlie's own tears fell harder. And if you handed me that letter 22 years ago? Silence. Everyone leaned in, because this mattered. This was the answer to the question haunting the entire story. What would she have done? Charlie smiled through tears and answered. I would have ripped it up. Silence. Then, Sadie gasped. Mason laughed through tears. Ellie smiled. Even Bo grinned. Charlie continued. I would have looked you in the eye. A pause. Called you an idiot, Sadie whispered. She did. Ellie nodded. She did. Charlie smiled wider. And then I would have married you anyway. That broke the tension completely. Laughter erupted through tears. Real laughter. Warm, healing, family laughter. The kind that felt like home. Wyatt finally smiled. A real smile. Rare, powerful, young somehow. For a moment, Emma saw the man from the photograph. The young cowboy Charlie fell in love with. Still there, still alive. Just older, wiser, more scarred, more loved. Wyatt reached for Charlie's hand. Held it. Looked at her with the same quiet intensity he had always reserved only for her. Then he spoke. Not as the ranch leader. Not as the father, not as the protector. Just as Wyatt. Just as the man who loved her. I'd still choose you, Charlie smiled. I know. A pause. Wyatt's voice lowered. No. She tilted her head. What? He stepped closer and said the words that completed the story. I still choose you. Silence. Then Charlie broke. She threw her arms around him, hard. Wyatt caught her instantly, held her tightly, like he had 22 years ago, like he always would. Bo looked up at Mason. Are they kissing? Mason wiped his eyes. Probably. Bo nodded. Gross. Storm barked. Bo pointed. Storm agrees. That completely destroyed the emotional atmosphere instantly. The entire attic burst into laughter, even Wyatt, even Charlie. Later that evening, as the sun dipped golden over Wyoming, Wyatt and Charlie sat alone on the porch swing. The unopened letter rested folded between them. No longer hidden. No longer buried. Just part of their story now. Charlie leaned into him. Peaceful, warm, home. Wyatt stared across Heartland Ridge Ranch. The barns, the pastures, the fence lines, the legacy. Then quietly said, You were right. Charlie smiled. About? Wyatt looked at her. About everything. A pause. His voice softened. You saw something in me before I did. Charlie's smile deepened. Yes. Wyatt raised an eyebrow. That confident? Charlie laughed. Very. He almost smiled. Then she rested her head on his shoulder. And together, they watched sunset paint the Wyoming sky gold. At Heartland Ridge Ranch, everyone understood something simple and true. Love is not built when two perfect people find each other. It's built when two imperfect people keep choosing each other. Again, and again, and again. The end. Thank you for visiting Heartland Ridge Ranch. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Snowfall and Second Chances for more Western romance, unforgettable characters, and heartwarming stories from Heartland Ridge Ranch, where family legacy, Western romance, and second chances ride together.